Welcome to Markets Now. I'm Michelle Rourke with Randy Martinson Ag. Higher prices in all but hogs this morning. And in the grains, Randy, we did see some profit taking yesterday, hit some chart resistance. But back up here today, kind of led by the wheat market. So is wheat trading technicals or seeing technical buying, or are we seeing maybe some concern yet about the Black Sea?
Well, I think the buying is off of the concerns about the Black Sea and even, the U.S. production. We're seeing rains up in the northern plains. We still have a ways to go to get the spring wheat planted. Canada, same scenarios playing out there where they're getting a little bit on the wet side. Russia came out yesterday and, we've been seeing consistent lowered production estimates this week. They came out yesterday and said that about 1% of their crop has died now because of the frost. It amounts to close to 2 million acres, I believe it is. So I think that's helping to keep the support in the wheat market. But every time we get a good push, then it's the technicals that's what brings us back down again.
Yeah, so let's talk about that because we actually scored a reversal yesterday in Chicago wheat. We certainly cannot take out that $7 mark, right?
We can't, and every time we get close up to it, we see some, sell stops and some selling hit the marketplace. And I'm sure there's a lot of farmers selling it. It starts to emerge at that level as well. There's a lot, and even up here in the northern plains, a lot of guys are sitting on a couple of years worth of wheat that they're waiting to get rid of. And, basis levels have improved, and with the wet conditions, they can't be in the field. So they're looking at moving a little bit of product. So I think it's all kind of combination of that causes this market to have a little bit of pressure once it gets up to those high resistance levels.
Yeah, and I mentioned Chicago wheat just because it's a round number, but obviously you're looking at your clientele, spring wheat and hard red winter wheat, and where are we running up into chart resistance there?
You get up into that 7.5 area in Minneapolis and you start running into some trouble. And I believe, it's not, and it's somewhere in between the two for Kansas City. But, you're right. Chicago is kind of the main wheat that everybody watches because it's the biggest market. It's the one that's the most traded. So we kind of take our lead off of that. Spring wheat only has a little bit of attention now because we're in the planting stages.
Yeah. And do you think the other factor is that you have the wheat tour moving through Kansas and essentially they're finding better wheat yields than they did a year ago?
I think that's adding to it. I mean, and they're finding, 10 bushels better than last year, which we knew it was going to be a little bit better. But because of the dry conditions we've been hearing about the Southwest, we thought we'd see a little bit of train wreck in some of the areas. Haven't seen that yet. Maybe this third day, the final day, they'll start getting into some of that drought-stricken region and see a little bit lower potential. But for not so far, it's been a pretty decent looking crop.
Yeah. We also had exports out this morning on a weekly basis. And for wheat, really, we're not picking up business, even though there are crop concerns globally, right?
Well, that's true. I mean, it seems to be only routine sales, and we're almost to the end of the marketing year for wheat. I think we got 3 weeks left for the old crop. Then we'll turn over to new crop, and the new crop sales were okay. I mean, nothing fantastic, but yeah, it seems like we're going to limp into the end of the year, and hopefully we can make USDA's projections. And they just increased it by 10 million, so that's going to be a little bit of a tall order.
Mm-hmm. Corn and soybeans, are they just following wheat this morning?
I think the last couple of days they have been. I mean, soybeans has a little bit of story with the wet conditions in Brazil and the continuing to see the rain in that region. Corn has a little bit of story with the rain that is going through the corn belt that's delaying planting, and especially when you look at Iowa, Illinois, and Nebraska, which they're quite a bit. Their delay is quite a bit larger than the rest of the states. So I think those are some side note stories, but for the most part, they're following wheat.
Right, and the planting delays, the weather story that we've seen in terms of southern Brazil, those stories, you got to feed the bull every day. So they're not big enough or I guess disruptive enough yet for the funds to keep pushing in this market and get us over these resistance areas on the charts.
That's right. I mean, if we were sitting at the end of May, the late planting for corn would be a little bit bigger story and would cause a little bit that would be some feed for the bull there. And if they were now starting to abandon the crop in southern Brazil, that would also be a little bit more news. But neither of those have occurred yet and don't appear to be on the horizon in the short term.
And weekly exports on corn and soybeans were really kind of tepid, weren't they?
That's a good way to put it. I mean, they were below for corn, below estimates. A little bit disappointing on the soybean side. We're getting, again, the back half of the marketing year, so it's a little bit a little bit harder to find business once you get this late in the season. But we haven't seen China in for either one for quite a while, and that's been a little bit concerning.
So we talked about the funds needing some ammunition to get over some of these resistance areas. If we don't get through those, do you think they're done covering shorts or not?
Yeah, I would bet that they are. I mean, we are also getting towards the end of the seasonal move for the upside in this market, especially for wheat and for corn. So, once you get to the end of May, you start the crop is planted for the most part, and we're just worried about weather. Then it's really going to be not until we get into July for corn to possibly see a little bit of a weather scare that comes into play during pollination. So, yeah, if we don't see this get a little bit of a push now, it's going to be a little while before we can see it the potential return.
So what are you thinking about percentage that producers should be pricing at these levels, old crop and new crop?
Well, they should definitely be looking at advancing sales. We'd like to see a little bit more push in this market, but I'd like to be somewhere around 30% once you get the crop planted. For old crop, I know there's a lot of that left out into the bins, and I would be trying to get that moved and get up at least a half or maybe 60% priced.
Cattle market is a little bit higher this morning, Randy, and it looks like the surge in the box beef values have really started to push the futures.
It has. I mean, you look at we've gotten some really good news economy wise, and in the cattle side. We got both the CPI and the PPI coming in decent. So that kind of helped fuel the fire, pushing the stock market, both the Dow, the Nasdaq, and the S&P to contract highs. So all that was supportive to the market, and I think that's helping take a lot of weight off the cattle. We still see slaughter weights a little bit heavy, but we still have tight supplies, and the demand on the box beef, which shows that there is domestic demand, is really helping to push the market.
Okay, is it that, or is it just these kill cuts that the packers have put in place?
Well, the kill cut, I mean, that's certainly hurting the chain speed, and that's pushing the weights. But the demand has been there, and that's helping.
Okay.
With the box beef price, and we've got the barbecue season just around the corner, and I think there's enough, getting ready to feature beef for that to try to keep the demand moving.
So do you think that will translate into higher cash trade this week? Will packers pay up because boxes have been moving higher? Maybe margins are better.
I'd like to think that. I mean, margins I know took a little hit here, and they've been kind of dwindling the last couple of weeks. I would say that with the boxes pushing, that's certainly going to help make it a little bit better on their balance sheet.
All right. Thanks for joining us, Randy Martinson with Martinson Ag. That is Markets Now.